The last moments of 10 lost worlds. This was Pompeii in its final hour, with Vesuvius already exploding above it. First came the falling ash, then pumice stones, burying the streets and turning day into a dim gray twilight. As the ash thickened, roofs began to fail. The air grew harder to breathe. Escape was running out. Then came the deadliest part, a pyroclastic surge, a fast, ground-hugging cloud of ash and superheated gas. When it reached Pompeii, it hit in seconds. Too hot, too fast, and too dense to survive. By the end of that final hour, Pompeii was buried, a city frozen in ash.
This is Earth when all the continents were one. More than 200 million years ago, animals could cross huge parts of Earth without ever touching an ocean. Then forces deep inside Earth began to tear it apart. The crust cracked, and magma rose through the split. As the split widened, seawater rushed in. A new ocean was being born. Over millions of years, the pieces drifted apart, and the world map we know began to appear. And even now, the continents are still moving. The map of Earth is only temporary.
The Sahara was once a paradise, green, wet, and full of life. There were huge lakes here. Animals thrived here. People lived here. This was not desert. Then the rains began to fail. Slowly, the lakes shrank, and the land started to dry. The green world did not vanish in a moment. It broke apart, grasslands fading, water retreating, life pulling back. And in the end, the last green places gave way. The desert took over. Now, the Sahara is the largest hot desert on Earth, but under its sand lies the memory of a lost world. For thousands of years, ice ruled the planet. Then the world began to warm. At first, the change was small, a drop of water, a crack in the ice. Soon, meltwater carved rivers through places that had been frozen solid. Animals followed the change. Grass returned. Herds moved. The frozen world began to retreat. And once the great ice began to retreat, it revealed land that had been hidden for thousands of years. The Ice Age did not end overnight, but once the melting began, Earth started becoming the world we recognize today. Imagine the last mammoth on Earth. Their ancestors once crossed huge, frozen continents in great herds. But the very last survivors were cut off on a tiny island far from the mainland. Over time, there were too few of them, in too small a place, for too long. And at the end, there may have been one left, no herd, no answer. Just an empty island and the wind. When the last mammoth died, a species that had survived ice ages did not end with a roar. It ended in silence. Imagine the last dodo that ever lived. For thousands of years, its island had no reason to teach it fear. Then ships arrived. People came. So did animals the island had never known. The dodo did not disappear all at once. Nests failed. Numbers fell. The forest grew quieter. And one day, there may have been only one left, calling into a world that no longer answered. When the last one died, the species did not scream. It simply became silence. A bird so common it darkened the sky, until one cage held the last one alive. Then people hunted them relentlessly. Their forests disappeared, and the impossible began to happen. The numbers crashed. And that mattered because passenger pigeons were built for living together. When too few remained, even survival began to fail. In the end, there was one left. Her name was Martha. And when Martha died in 1914, a species that had once numbered in the billions became none. This was Alexandria's Great Library, a place built to gather the world's knowledge. Inside were scrolls on medicine, stars, maps, mathematics, stories, ideas carried from across the ancient world. Then came smoke. and in a building filled with dry papyrus, fire did not need long. People may have tried to save what they could, but a library of scrolls cannot be carried out in one night. What burned that night was more than paper. It was names we no longer know, books we will never read, and ideas history cannot recover. And the cruelest part is this: we do not even know everything we lost. For centuries, this sand had heard steel, blood, and roaring crowds. This was not only combat, it was theater, punishment, politics, and entertainment for an empire. Then the blades moved again, one last ritual of steel in the dust. But near the end of Rome's gladiator age, another voice entered the arena, a voice saying this had to stop. And after centuries of death as spectacle, the roar began to fade. When the last fight ended, the Colosseum was still standing, but one of Rome's oldest rituals was gone. Imagine the last great tree on Easter Island. Rapa Nui was not always bare. It once held forests of giant palms, wood for canoes, shelter, tools, and life. Over time, the trees were used faster than the forest could recover, and if the seeds could not grow back, the end kept getting closer. And then, one day, the last great tree fell. With no large trees left, there was less wood for canoes, less shelter, and less protection for the soil. The island could not simply grow its old world back. The stone faces stayed, but the forests that once shared this island were gone. This was the Aral Sea, once so large it felt impossible to lose. Then the rivers that fed it were diverted, the water was sent into fields, and the sea stopped being replaced. Year after year, the shoreline ran away. Water pooled back. The sea was shrinking in plain sight. Soon, ships were left behind in dry sand. Harbors became desert. Fishing towns became ghost towns. And when the water was gone, it left something worse behind. Salt and toxic dust, lifted by the wind and carried for miles. Within a human lifetime, a sea the size of a country was nearly erased. Not by nature alone, but by us. When he died, an entire language died with him. Because a language is not just words. It carries stories, songs, names, memory, a whole way of seeing the world. Over time, fewer children learned it. Daily life changed, and the language grew quieter. At the end, there may be no one left to answer back. The last conversation ends before the last life does. And when the last fluent speaker dies, the language can fall silent forever. The words may survive on paper or tape, but the living voice, the one that carried them naturally, is gone. Somewhere in the ice, they left behind their final words. They entered a frozen world with maps full of blank spaces, and then the ice closed around them. Food ran low. The cold got worse. Each day, the distance to rescue felt longer. So someone wrote a message not for victory, but for the person who might one day find them. Then they left it behind and walked on into the white. The message survived longer than they did. By the time the words were found, the voices were gone. A whole expedition had become a message in the ice.